Good evening. I'm Clifford Murray, and this is another rendering of Cliff's Office. As most of you know, Cliff's Office is an extension of Empowerment for Tomorrow, a platform in which I developed several years ago, specifically designed for Black men. At its core, Black male youth between the ages of 14 and 19. The caveat of that platform would be where if the biological father wasn't available, present, a male stakeholder in the young man's life. Empowerment for tomorrow, as the term would imply, older men such as myself establishing synergy with younger men, planting the right seeds in their minds so they can understand where they are with respect to navigating this country in which we live in, set against the backdrop of white supremacy, promulgated systemic racism, all of the things that go on in this country that specifically affect Black men. How are we looking and viewing things through the lens of Black men, and how we need to have some established resolutions lending themselves to Black empowerment. As you see in the title, today we're going to be dealing with the TLA, the Topic Learning Assessment, of Negro surrogate. Negro surrogate. Basically, we're going to be talking about nigger surrogates. And as my manner is, let's get on into it and define what surrogate is. A surrogate, a substitute, especially a person deputizing for another in a specific role or office. Boy, do we have a lot of Black men and women living up to that definition to a T. A person or thing acting or serving in place of another. It's an unfortunate situation in our dynamic in this country, but we actually have Black men and women who are surrogates for white supremacist ideology. Arose by any other name, sometimes referred to as butter biscuit, bootlicks, sellouts, coons, you name it. I think I like the term nigger surrogate. Surrogate seems to connote more of an intimate type of relationship with massa. And having said that, let's go ahead and look at what I believe could be, what I could argue would be some of the underpinnings of this unfortunate mindset that continues to plague us today, has its foundation in that chattel slavery. Bed wenching, mammy, and house nigger. Bed wench, mammy, and house nigger. Particularly with you younger men, the term bed wench refers to a Black woman during slavery. A Black woman, she didn't really have any choice. Remember, during slavery, chattel slavery, a human being was like, it was property of the white slave owner, so he could do basically whatever he wanted to do to his female property. We know with this unfortunate situation of slavery, chattel slavery, white men raped and took advantage, what have you, of our Black women sexually. She didn't have a choice. Now, the term bed wench today, in a sense, implies women who actually do have a choice and are willing to engage. You know, we've got this Me Too movement going on. They're willing to engage in a quid pro quo type of thing. They're well aware, I'm going to give you something in return, you're going to give me something. We normally see this type of sexual relation dynamic play out in corporate America in the job type of situation where I want a more favorable position within the company. Maybe it'll lend itself to a raise or a promotion or so forth because I'm sleeping with the boss. But a bed wench. There's a scene out of 12 Years a Slave. I believe the character is being played by Alfre Woodard, where she's talking to the young woman who is the affection of the slave owner. And the character being played by Alfre Woodard is basically saying, use that to your advantage, as she's sitting on the front porch of Massa's house. Another aspect of this nigger surrogate type of mindset, where we're endearing all things to Massa, the mammy. Now, the mammy was generally an older black woman who basically, I would analogize as that person in human resources, or that person at the company who lets Massa know just what the climate and culture of the slaves are right now, Massa. And she keeps everything in check, keeps all of the Negroes in check. That matriarchal type of mindset where, now, Jeremiah, you get on over there. You know Massa ain't gonna like that. Y'all cut that foolishness out. Get on back to work now. She's one of them. Keeps everything copacetic. Massa can always come to Mammy to get an inside track on what's going on out there with my slaves. And she'll be more than happy to keep Massa informed. Another characterization of Mammy was that she, a lot of times, would actually rear and breastfeed and nurse Massa's white wife, their children. So Mammy had a lot of clout with respect to a lot of that. House nigger. If you've ever seen the movie Django, the character played by Jamie Foxx, the title star, where he's a free man and he goes back to the plantation to rescue his damsel in distress, being played by Kerry Washington. But if you've seen that movie, the star of that movie, the impression that's left out of that movie is the character that's being played by Samuel Jackson and the house nigger, who essentially becomes the real antagonist to Django. The house nigger, as played by Samuel Jackson, his loyalty, devotion, love for Massa, he will do anything for Massa. And if that means turning in, selling out his own black people, keeping Massa informed of what these other Negroes out here on the plantation are doing, well, I's here for you, Massa. So a lot of these things manifest and spill over into modern day type of mindsets, where we still, after 400 and something years, we still have black men and women in this country who will sell us out to Massa to keep us from any type of sense of real black empowerment. You've heard me say 7 out of 10 black people don't think critically about a damn thing in the first place. I represent one of the 3 out of 10 who do. A lot of these Negro surrogates are that 7 out of 10. Now, coming up to modern day here, I think it's going to be important, particularly for you young men, to pay attention. There's there's some subtle categories or characteristics that I'm going to point out. Essentially, the differences in the type of Negro surrogates that we have. Roland Martin. Roland Martin, this is Roland Martin right here. Roland Martin is a political pundit, American journalist, is the title given as defined by Wikipedia. He was a contributor to CNN several years ago, went over to TV One, which is another Afrocentric type of platform. I believe Kathy Hughes may have a lot to do with that. The black woman who owns a lot of urban radio stations and so forth. I believe TV One was part of her conglomerate portfolio. I believe her son is at the helm of running a lot of that now. But anyway, he was on TV One. Roland Martin also has a platform out here in the YouTube space. Now, this is the danger of a nigger surrogate like Roland Martin. He's steeped, his rhetoric is steeped in Afrocentric, I love my people, I'm black first and so forth. No, he's not really. Roland Martin is that kumbaya, and not kumbaya with black folk, but kumbaya mindset, good trouble John Lewis type with white America. During the campaign of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, he was showing Hillary Clinton how to do the nay and wanting to endear white America to us and wants that to be reciprocated from black America. He's also dyed in the wool Democratic Party only. They're the only thing that can save us. I believe Roland Martin also made a statement several years ago on his platform that if it takes us another 400 and something years to have a seat at the table, that's ridiculously pathetic as hell. Roland Martin he's the type that wants to endear himself and wants black people to come around and ensure that white people respect us and love us, and we can be some good Negroes, and white people will take us in if we just let them know how much we love them. That's Roland Martin's mindset at his core. At one point, he was probably considered maybe America's top black journalist with all of the platforms he was matriculating in and elbows he was rubbing against in the political sphere of white America and so forth, and being on these political pundit Sunday morning shows of Meet the Press and Good Morning America and all of this type of stuff. But Roland Martin could care less about true black empowerment, which is to say, by us, for us, because of us. And a lot of times, these political pundit bobbleheads who have these major platforms or who have had them, CNN let him go, I believe, because he made some disparaging remarks about homosexuality and they labeled him homophobic. That's another topic altogether, but you don't speak against the LGBT community. And let's face it, black people, black men. See, this is part of playing, understanding chess versus checkers. Any black man, particularly a black man, on any type of platform, nationally recognized platform where a black man gets to have some say about something, yes, he's been allowed. I'm using the word allowed. Black people don't run and control a damn thing in this country. We don't control shit. So yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow. Swallow the damn pill. Black men and black women on these platforms are allowed by white daddy. I've said a million times. White media is one of the most formidable allies of white supremacy there ever was. So they're not going to have any black people on there making statements about true black empowerment, having dialogue about black empowerment specifically. That's why you hear words of and phrases of African American and black folk, as well as people of color and other marginalized groups. People like Roland Martin they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them, in a sense. And nigger surrogates like him with these platforms, Don Lemon and other black political pundit bobbleheads on any nationally recognized platform, you have to understand they're not going to be on those platforms if they sound like me and other black men and women who operate in this black courageous community, sometimes referred to as the black consciousness community, but there you go. They're not going to be on these platforms. Roland Martin and the like are very dangerous Negro surrogates because they have these type of platforms, invited on these type of shows, and in almost all cases, though they may come off as for the black people, it's not really to the degree of true black empowerment. They're real subtle and sneaky about the way they come off, and so many of our black people would gravitate to somebody like Roland Martin as he's preaching, vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote for Biden, which I would have to assume he ought to have egg on his face like so many of these black people who voted for Biden and put Biden in that position to be president, like our black vote always does. And Biden continues to give his white ass for black America to kiss, particularly with the Haitian immigrant border situation that just happened, and Biden putting them back on planes quicker than you can shake a stick at. Didn't see all of that roll out with the DACA and the Latino Hispanic immigration scenario and all of that stuff with them. But Biden has made it quite clear, we're not having Negroes come into the country. Get their black asses out of here. Roland Martin, nigger surrogate, and the like, you got to watch them. Another nigger surrogate in the political realm, my goodness, Uncle Ruckus, James Clyburn. I've told you that in previous videos, James Clyburn, from a political standpoint, would be one of the most powerful black men in America based on his political standing as majority whip now in Congress. I think he may have had the minority whip when he was during the Trump administration, but now that the Democrats seem to have a majority because of Kamala Harris, he would be, I think, considered the majority whip. He's also one of the most senior advisors on several platforms in committees within the political sphere, as well as the most senior and one of the most recognizable black voices of the Congressional Black Caucus. Having said that, the Congressional Black Caucus being chief among nigger surrogates politically, James Clyburn and the like, and the rest of the Congressional Black Caucus members are party first, long before they even get around to what their designators suggest. Congressional Black Caucus. that should evoke everything black. And that's the last thing they're doing. James Clyburn, his light bulb eureka moment during the January 6th insurrection, as it was called by even white media, 7 days later on January 13th, wanted to pass a bill that Lift Every Voice and Sing, which has been construed as Black America's national anthem. He wanted that to be America's national hymn in an attempt to heal the nation's racial divide. Uncle Ruckus on steroids. He's also made some slick comments pertaining to critical race theory. It's a red herring, and remember, it's just theory. He's not going to do anything to upset the apple cart. Not anything. He's as far away as true black empowerment as the earth is from the sun. James Clyburn views everything in his mind through black folk having some sense of leveling up. He views all of that being done through political means. And as I've stated before, Democrat or Republican Party, this country has never done anything specifically for Black America. It's only been God's grace that we've been allowed to survive and thrive in this country the way we have. James Clyburn, nigger surrogate, quite frankly, number one from a political standpoint. They embody a lot of the nonviolent rhetoric of John Lewis, and I mention him more so than I would say Dr. King, because at the end of Dr. King's life, there's been documentation and articles that support that even Dr. King realized he may have made a mistake. He may have had misfired on energy and resources, as I like to say, pertaining to the matter of Black empowerment. I continue to see videos that I've never seen on Dr. King before, where nonviolence and all of this, he seems to be the furthest from that. Now, some of these videos and articles and things are coming out well after he's passed away. Being assassinated, quite frankly. But John Lewis and Andrew Young and all of these type of Negro surrogates, the Congressional Black Caucus is still steeped. They put a lot of their energy and resources into those things that decade after decade after decade that has never helped us. I think I showed you a picture of Al Sharpton marching with Dr. Martin Luther King III, his son, with a banner, "Protect Our Power." That's been a trick of white supremacy, fostering that Black people actually have power in voting, and Black people never even vote with a sense of quid pro quo. We just give our vote away for nothing. And people like James Clyburn, who know better, they do. They purposely don't even foster that. A nigger surrogate like James Clyburn, very dangerous to Black empowerment. Who else do we have here? The very attractive, beautiful Angela Rye. This is Angela Rye. couple of weeks ago, she made a statement that we need white America as our allies. Now, I have watched Angela Rye for years. Maybe some of you have too, particularly during the coming of age of our first black president during the Obama administration and so forth. Angela Rye, a contributor to CNN, the cable news network as well. If you listen to Angela Rye, she too is kind of wrapped up into that Afrocentric type of rhetoric, yet she makes a statement like this. Again, she's matriculated in these political circles, and some of our black folk just love that. They love being able to say that they rub elbows and rub shoulders with some of America's most powerful white elite. They get off on that type of stuff. If you've ever listened to Angela Rye, she gets into she has a very, in my opinion, a very fiery spirit, can get into a lot of heated disposition conversations right there on the platform on CNN, and can sometimes borderline on ratchetness. But she's another one of those political pundit bobbleheads who we have to have white massa to save us. We have to align our energy and resources with them. Despite some of her fiery rhetoric, she will always default to, now, massa, do you really want me to do this, or what do I need to do? She's never going to go over into real, true black empowerment either. Another person we have to deal with, this guy, unlike, let's say, Roland Martin and Angela Rye, he's a blatant in your face. That's right, I'm a nigger surrogate, and I don't give a damn what you think about it. This is Larry Elder. Larry Elder, recently running for governor of California, made some disparaging remarks. He's made several over his career. He's a Republican strategist. Obviously, he's running for the Republican seat, gubernatorial seat of California. A few weeks ago or so, he made some statements. If you want to argue reparations for black people, you have to argue reparations for white slave owners since they lost their property. This is Larry Elder. Larry Elder is also a contributor to the Black News Channel. The Black News Channel, which I'm going to get into, with organizations who define nigger surrogates. Right now, I'm showing you individuals and the different types. You have an Afrocentric nigger surrogate in a Roland Martin or Angela Rye. Now I'm talking about Larry Elder. There's no Afrocentric about him at all. He ends some of his YouTube platforms, we've got a country to save. This is a black man talking about how he's got a country to save with the things this country has done to black folk. He's a pull yourself up by your bootstraps, all of this type of shenanigan. He is unapologetically coon. That's what Larry Elder is. Somebody like Roland Martin, if I told him, Roland Martin he's the type who would never believe he's a coon nigger. He would never believe he's a nigger surrogate. James Clyburn and the like, the congressional black, they would never believe if you told them to their face Larry Elder, that's right. I don't give a damn. I said what I said because I'm unapologetically cool, nigga. That's how Larry Elder comes off. So you see the two different types of nigga surrogates. And him being a contributor to the Black News Channel. By the way, the Black News Channel, at its core, through business acumen, let's say, the CEO and COO, Chief Operating Officer, are the two major positions of any corporate company in America, the way things are just set up. And the Black News Channel, its CEO and COO were two white men. And some of the black folk I looked at, and I saw Larry Elder being one of the contributors. The Black News Channel also, with black people, now let's just use some critical thinking here. When I looked at the research on them, black people overwhelmingly go with the Democratic Party. The Black News Channel is heavily funded by the Republican Party. Of course, I could care about either one, as I've stated. They've never done anything, but that just goes to show you the mindset, unfortunately, and the dynamics that have played out in our situation in this country, where Black America, we can't really do anything without the help of white daddy. But Larry Elder, unapologetically butter biscuit coon, makes no mistake. He has no reservations about it at all. Let's see, who else do we have as one of the coon Negroes we need, particularly our young men. You need to recognize who these people are and what they're about. This guy right here, Benjamin Crump. I saw an article where they referred to him as Black America's Attorney General. Try to get through this segment. We're talking about this guy. You talk about ridiculously pathetic. Benjamin Crump hasn't won a case really with all of these unarmed black men and women that have been gunned down over these several years. Now, the situation with George Floyd, and again, that was steeped in a number one. It's going to be second degree no matter what. So let's get that straight. But Benjamin Crump, he promotes a don't upset white America, and we need to always show our respect for their benevolence and love that we want to get from them. And of course, this will lend itself to me getting a big paycheck for you, surviving family member of the one that was gunned down. Like I said before, any black man who is allowed to function at these levels, white America is not going to have an unabashedly black male who is unapologetically black first, don't take no shit from nobody on a national platform. Benjamin Crump is one of the most ridiculously pathetic black nigger surrogates that's out there. Even his, I'm talking my personal opinion now. Leave a comment in the comment section if you like it or don't like it. I don't care. This man, his disposition, his voice inflection, there is nothing confidently aggressive, if I could put those two words together. Whenever I've seen him, at a press conference talking about these things on how he's going to attack and prosecute these race soldiers to the fully extent of the law. His whole aura and disposition comes off as weakness. His voice inflection, his tone. Now, Harvard, y'all better than that. White America, you better than that now. These families just want to have peace of mind. Black America's Attorney General, Benjamin Crump, he does the bidding for white supremacy. And see, this is what we have to be sharp about, black men. All of these black folk, what you talking about, Cliff? All these black folk in these positions trying to do something, they're not trying to do a damn thing for us. At its core, listen to what I am saying. You got to get to the point to where you understand spiritual matters. You got to get to the point, black men, where you understand deeper levels of bullshit. You have to get to the point to where you understand chess versus checkers. We got some black folk out here who relish in the pacifiers. I believe Tariq Nasheed refers to these as nigger trinkets. We got a street named after so-and-so. Look at the send-off that the networks gave John Lewis. Biden picked a black woman to be vice president. We got all of these black people in these positions of so-called power. And when it's time to really put the rubber to the road and leverage up to level up, they fall short every time. I was looking at an article the other day. Looks like the Democratic Party, and being fueled by so much of the Congressional Black Caucus members, the John Lewis crime bill and all of the things that they want to evoke and turn around within the criminal justice system with policing and all of that, that's fallen on its face, apparently. We've seen what Biden has done, showing his true colors again, giving black America his white ass to kiss with the Haitian scenario, even telling black America, the black leadership, so-called, of black America, in his transition as president-elect, black America, you're not going to be a priority. Really, in his heart of hearts, you never have been. But I appreciate James Clyburn being the kingmaker and putting me in this position. Because without the black vote, no Democratic candidate will ever really get to where he needs to be. Benjamin Crump, he's out to get a paycheck for the families. And I haven't done research in general. I don't know if he gets a certain percentage of the payouts. Maybe he does. I don't know if he's a federal, if he works for the federal government in that sense or not. but he's one of the chief nigger surrogates in America. Hands down, no question about it. So we've looked at some different types of nigger surrogates and what they're draped in unapologetically, types like Larry Elder. And in every outlier in society, we see this Negro surrogate default type of thing in the entertainment industry. We see it politically. We see it in the criminal justice. We see it in social constructs. A few weeks ago, I was reading an article, where I talked about critical race theory and how we should just put that under the menu item of file it in the trash can. Black folk ought to know that the tenets of critical race thinking, we should already know that. We know that white America has gone out and purposely put things in place to keep black America marginalized. Now they want to teach it in schools, but at any rate, there was some black, I think PhD type of educator in one article. There's a video associated with it, but he basically makes a statement that teaching critical race theory, I'm paraphrasing, would essentially just destroy the souls of white children. This kind of stuff. You've heard me say before, it's a two-pronged attack for black men and women like me. We know white America could give a damn. They have never liked black men who are intelligent, articulate, unapologetically black first. Black men who understand the importance of protecting and providing for our community. Black men who understand no nonsense. Top of the food chain, high dominant, conscientious, if you want to use terms, operating in the alpha king sphere, acknowledging the most high, take no shit from nobody. White America has never loved black men like us, and yet we've got black men and women in our community who hate us just as much. I have on my little sheet here as I'm going down through this, Andrew Young made some of the most disparaging remarks. Andrew Young is one of those black men in black American history and American history who would be considered a civil rights icon, like John Lewis. He was on the balcony that day, standing right next to Dr. Martin Luther King when he was assassinated. Jesse Jackson was there. We know the famous photograph from that hotel. He was on Meet the Press a few years ago, making some egregious statements following the Charlottesville incident, where President Trump was talking about there good and bad people on both sides. Some of the statements that Andrew Young made on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd pretty much sided with what Trump was saying. Now, this is supposed to be a black civil rights icon. Former ambassador to the United Nations during President Carter's administration. I'm from Atlanta, born and raised. He was an Atlanta mayor, and certainly black folk in Atlanta. Ooh, you don't say nothing against Andrew Young. Nigger surrogate number one. He's one of those. Again, tied in that kumbaya type of thing. A rising tide will lift all boats. This nigger surrogate mindset even at the highest levels of office with our first black president, President Barack Obama, making statements, well, we don't need, we'll never get reparations, and making statements about, when asked, well, what are you going to specifically do for black people? And made a statement on, I think, with a BET interviewer. Well, how would our Latino brothers feel about this? Who gives a damn? These are the kind of mindsets we have all across the board. And we've had them throughout our 400 and something year history, from chattel slavery through emancipation, through Reconstruction, through Jim Crow, you name it. And it's one thing to have to take on the vestiges of white supremacy and all of its ugliness. And some of their lead agents are black people. Steve Harvey. Respected Steve Harvey as a comedian and so forth, but Steve Harvey is one of those from in the entertainment industry. And there are other people like him, but I'm using him since he's more recognizable. He's not going to upset the apple cart either. Comes off as pro-black, but I would say pro-black to a degree. Steve Harvey is not going to upset the apple cart. The Steve Harvey and Tom Joyner or Ricky Smiley radio shows and things like that, I believe, are owned by iHeartRadio. Their portfolio packages several demographic platforms in radio markets. And Steve Harvey is a mainstream face in white America with the shows he hosts on Family Feud, as well as the one show he did have before he abruptly moved on from that show. And I think Kelly Clarkson ended up filling that void, if you will. But again, major platform, nationally recognized, pretty much black men like that somewhere along the way. If you had a real black man card, you have to turn it in if you're going to deal and play. Who else do we have? Reverend Al Sharpton. Of course, I showed you a picture of him. Interesting enigma with Al Sharpton. Back in the day, when you could say when Al Sharpton was fat, overweight, if you will, certainly was that hellraiser type of, we're not taking this. And followed a lot of the misfired tenets of marching and so forth, with things that went on pretty much out of New York City and things that didn't go right with certain people. You know, Al Sharpton was always there as that hellraiser brother number one. I think he even made a statement on a recent NAACP award show where, somewhat bragging on his credentials, a few years ago or so, I remember, where he was saying, and I'm paraphrasing, how white America hates the fact that that little black man has gotten up out of bed and put his shoes on. As if to say, white America hates Al Sharpton because they know what I stand for. Well, I would have to say Al Sharpton, particularly during the Obama administration, gets this platform on Politics Nation on MSNBC. Again, once you get on these platforms of national recognition, Al Sharpton's light of being a soul brother number one for black folk is what he's marketed for years. That's not the case with him. Al Sharpton has turned into and morphed into one of Black America's top nigger surrogates, believe it or not. The Action Network. He's not going to bite the hand that feeds him as well. Nigger surrogate organizations, and get on out of here. NAACP, National Association for Colored People. I used to say, even when I was in high school, why don't they just call it the National Association for Black People? I thought like that then when I was 15, 16 years old. NAACP is all about trying to leverage so-called political clout and so forth. I think they even gave Dr. Fauci some type of NAACP major award and all that he was doing. We just don't have any black folk that believe in keeping anything specifically for black people and their contributions for black people specifically. NAACP wants to ride on the Kumbaya trail and have white America love us and respect us. And just opposed to that, I'll say this about Black Lives Matter. I talked to you in a previous video about how they are a distraction. I wouldn't necessarily group Black Lives Matter in a coon nigger surrogate organization. Their primary mission and focus is LGBTQ, and black male leadership is really not needed or wanted. Wouldn't necessarily put them in a nigger surrogate type of organizational mode, but they play right into the hands of white supremacy, as I've articulated in a previous video. Wouldn't necessarily pigeon them as nigger surrogates, even though they have a lot of, as I pointed out, a lot of white support. But that runs along other lines. Those of us who think critically and understand how white supremacy would certainly appreciate. Yes, you just concentrate on the LGBTQ component, prioritizing that, and certainly advocating indirectly as you do, but directly as you do. No black male leadership needed or really wanted. Well, white supremacy loves that aspect of what Black Lives Matter do anyway. I've talked about Reverend Al Sharpton's Action Network, Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. Again, a lot of that steeped in the Kumbaya, Ticket to Ride train, want to try to acquiesce in default to white America loving us, respecting us, and please stop killing us. We just want a seat at the table type of mantra. Black entertainment television, ridiculously pathetic. Ridiculously pathetic. They are allowed to operate, and they play right into the hands of white supremacy. Image is very important. I've talked about that. And the image of our black culture, the effeminization of black men, plays right into the hands of white supremacy. And I would put them as a nigger surrogate organization for them to want to constantly fuel that and pay homage to their financial supporters, a large percentage which happens to be white corporate America. The Black News Channel, I've already talked about them. And one of their mission, when I did the research on the Black News Channel, I looked at, I think it's about 10 or 15 bullet points they want to come across with under their About Us and mission statements. And one of them is to want to reach out to other demographic ethnic groups and establish a bridge of dialogue and communication with them. And again, I told you who runs the CEO and the COO. Those positions are where the rubber meets the road for any major corporate entity organization. The Black News Channel is actually being run by two white men. And its primary owner is a Middle Easterner who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm pretty sure, with the infusion of investment money that he put in. That, coupled with the Black News Channel, is overall supported by a conservative, Republican-based foundation. The Black News Channel. They also have contributors like Larry Elder and Dr. Lamont Hill as part of their contributors. Magazines, of course, magazines revenue comes through primarily through corporate advertising. So Essence, every time you pick up an Essence magazine, it's black women running this, black women doing that. Of course, it should be. It's a magazine for black women. I get that. Ironically enough, a black woman had nothing to do with its founding. Four black men came together to actually come up with the idea of having a magazine for black women, and the linchpin in pulling its distribution and publication jumpstart has the dubious distinction of Hugh Hefner being able to give so much of the money to get that magazine started. So there we go again with yet another example of we can't do anything without an infusion from white people. And it's somewhat interesting to see that Hugh Hefner, and we know what magazine he is behind and what that magazine is about with portraying its women. Ironically enough, he gets the distinction of, without Hugh Hefner, Essence Magazine, a magazine for black women, probably wouldn't exist. We just, with the research I've done on them. And other Afrocentric publications. Ebony Magazine does not exist anymore for a myriad of reasons. I think they just didn't capitalize or show any type of business acumen with respect to things going digitally and so forth, and maybe some other things that they didn't run well from a financial standpoint. We'll see what develops as I think a retired basketball player ended up buying them out, but again, they haven't put any real blueprint back on the market. But Ebony Magazine, Essence Magazine, some of these other Afrocentric magazine and digital news platforms, the Griot, which I believe is owned by Byron Allen. And Byron Allen has certainly made some emphatic statements along the lines of Black empowerment per se. But at the end of the day, he too is going to acquiesce and default to doing what he has to do to not upset his financial apple cart as well. And then, of course, one of the biggest nigger surrogate organizations would have to be the Black church. At one point, the Black church was steeped in what could be defined as Black empowerment decades ago. The Black church has morphed into something that's so far from Black empowerment. It used to be synonymous with that. The Black church is as far as the East is from the West, to use a spiritual anecdote from Black empowerment, is not even funny. Having said all of this, that's a good segue into what next week's topic learning assessment is going to be, as I've alluded to this several times in previous videos, but next week we're going to go ahead and do it and get into it. There are three entities within the Black community that undermine Black empowerment like you wouldn't believe. Black clergy, your Black politicians, and your Black educators. Next week we're going to get into a topic learning assessment in greater detail on how those three entities, Black clergy, Black politicians, and Black educators, do more to undermine Black empowerment that you could shake a stick at. I trust that this video on understanding and showing you some pictures on who some of these nigger surrogates are and what they are about and how they lend themselves to undermining Black empowerment, and how we as Black men need to be sharp spiritually and mentally with a view to establishing critical thinking pertaining to these people, some of which who say they are about Black first, and they're far from it. You've got those types, you've got the types like Larry Elder, you've got these organizations, you've got the Benjamin Crumps, the Angela Rye's of the world. All of these, they're not trying to go where we're trying to go. Love you more than you know. See you next week.